Right. Good evening, everybody. It is 6:30. So as we begin this meeting, I will ask everyone in the room to please silence cell phones and other electronic devices. And I'll remind council that our procedure bylaw prescribes the use of technology during council meetings. Again, at 6:30 p.m., I'll call this council planning meeting to order. We acknowledge that we are meeting today on the traditional territory of the Mississauga and Anishinaabe, now of Alderville, who have lived on and cared for this land for generations. We recognize their enduring connection to this land, the water, and the community, and we pay respect to their elders, both past and present. As we come together to make important decisions for our community, let us be mindful of our responsibility to uphold the values of justice, respect, and inclusivity for all the people who call this traditional territory home. I have a motion moved by Councillor Rowley, seconded by Deputy Mayor Anderson, that Council approve the April 13th, 2026 planning meeting agenda as presented. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Being none opposed, that motion's carried. Members of Council have any declarations of pecuniary interest? And if so, please state the general nature thereof. There are none noted. We have no delegations listed on this evening's agenda. That brings us to our statutory public meeting with a motion moved by Councillor McCausland, seconded by Councillor Butwell. The council move into the statutory public meeting April 13th, 2026 at 6:31 p.m. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Being none opposed, that motion's carried. Municipality of Brighton takes steps beyond the requirements of the Planning Act to engage the community in land use planning initiatives. The municipality also holds a statutory public meeting on the planning item and then receives a staff report with a recommendation on which council will make a decision. It is during this meeting that council depends on the community to provide input for our decision. This input may be received in advance of the statutory public meeting by sending correspondence to the clerk's office and/or by making an oral submission to council at the statutory public meeting. This will best inform council on the land use planning matter prior to council making our final decision. The province's regulations now limit appeal rights to only the applicant and specified regulated persons. For details or information on the new appeal process, please visit the municipal website or contact the clerk's office. So that brings us to the first item in our statutory public meeting. The item is the draft secondary plan version 2. This evening, we have a public meeting regarding the draft secondary plan. The purpose of the meeting this evening is to present the draft secondary plan version 2, satisfy the requirements of the Planning Act for a statutory public meeting, and provide council and the public with an overview of the updates made since the October 2025 draft. And so, Mrs. Whiteman, by what method and on what date was notice of the statutory public meeting given?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Notice of the public meeting was given on the 24th of March, 2026 by website posting, social media, and local media. Notice was also circulated to all the agencies as required under the Planning Act.
Thank you, Mrs. Whiteman. And I understand there's a PowerPoint presentation. So would you and Mr. Barnes please present your slideshow and your presentation for council and the public?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you. Mr. Mayor, members of council, good evening. I would like to begin by thanking all those who took the time to provide comments and feedback on the secondary plan. The level of engagement was very positive, and the input received has been carefully considered and has helped shape a more robust plan that will guide and direct development over the coming years. This evening, I will walk you through the key components of the updated draft before you. The secondary plan focuses on 3 key areas within the urban boundary, being the northeast, northwest, and southwest secondary plan areas, commonly referred to as the SPAs. These areas represent the primary locations for future growth within the settlement area and have even been planned comprehensively under this secondary plan. These lands are identified as greenfield areas, meaning they are currently largely undeveloped and are planned for future growth in a coordinated and phased manner. Greenfield planning allows the municipality to proactively guide how these lands develop, ensuring that infrastructure, transportation, and land uses are planned in an integrated and efficient way rather than in a piecemeal fashion. And with the next slides, we will show you the areas. Northeast area number 1. This is the different land uses that we will use during the secondary plan. The next one is area number 2A and 2B, Northwest. As you can see, we've made it pretty colorful. Initially, it was just green in the official plan, which means it was deferred growth for greenfield areas. And the third area is Southwest area number 3. There's lots of environmental areas on that piece, as you can see. The process and consultation of the secondary plan was quite transparent. We had lots of engagement. The Audible First Nation has also been involved. And we have received lots of feedback. This is a project that has been started in 2023, 2022. And through the process, there has been extensive and robust engagement. The county, Lower Trent Conservation Authority, landowners, and other agencies. So this process has been grounded in transparency with clear communication and multiple opportunities for the public and agencies to review and provide input at each stage. In today's staff report, there has been made mention of the secondary plan area expansion, where we added an additional area due to transportation network considerations, and those landowners have only been included in the process over the last 2 months. So they have not been part of the earlier consultation processes. What this plan does and does not do. This plan does not mean development happens tomorrow. We have received a lot of concerns about an immediate change in the land parcels. All development still requires applications, review, and council approval. It provides a framework to guide growth over time as and when development applications are brought forward and approved. What does this plan do? What this plan does not do is approve developments, set construction timelines, require immediate change, or override future public input. You will still get an opportunity to comment on individual applications as it is submitted to the council. We heard clearly that residents value Brighton's character, natural environment, and quality of life. And we have gone the extra mile to ensure that we include these sentiments in the plan. What we heard from the community. The purpose of this plan is not to accelerate change, but to ensure when change happens, it is coordinated, appropriate, and reflects the character of Brighton. The secondary plan provides a framework. Existing development rights and applications will continue to be reviewed through the appropriate planning processes. Details such as trail alignment and facility locations are typically refined at the subdivision stage. We understand that change can feel uncertain, especially when it affects the qualities that make Brighton special. This plan does not remove those qualities. It provides a framework to guide growth carefully over time, with continued opportunities for public input at each stage of development. how the plan responds. So the purpose of this plan is not to accelerate change, like I said, but to ensure that when change happens, there is ample opportunity for everyone to comment and for us to engage in studies so that we can have a plan that's going to work for the community. Through you, Mr. Mayor, that concludes my portion of this presentation. I will now turn it over to Brent to continue with the policy overview.
Thank you, Renee. As Renee said, I'll give you a brief high-level overview of what each of the land use designations entails, and give you an outline of what the next steps are to moving this forward. First in land use designation is the residential, and the way we determined what land needs were was based on population projections that we provided, I guess 2 or 3 years ago we started this, to determine how many dwellings were required over the next 25 years. This plan, I don't know if Renee said it, but it's to 2051, 25-year plan. And we determined that within the secondary plan areas, we would require 1,625 dwelling units throughout the 3 areas. And for the purposes of the secondary plan, we've allocated in the northeast 580 dwellings, in the northwest 812, and in the southwest 232 dwelling units. So the designation, the residential land use designation, pretty much mirrors what you have now in terms of permitted uses. All land use densities, low, medium, and high density. One change that we are advocating is a little bit higher density target overall. The plan is encouraging or shooting for 7 units per net hectare, which is about 10 to 15% higher density than is found in the overall the built up area now. And we do that by providing smaller lots, more multi-unit developments, that sort of thing. As I said, it provides a range of housing, singles, single detached, semi-detached, and apartments, dwelling units. The residential designation also permits uses that we consider would encourage complete neighborhoods. There would be parkettes, neighborhood convenience stores, places of worship, daycares. So all those uses would be also permitted within that yellow area that you saw on those maps. And so that's the residential land use. Now, as I said, I'll just do an overview and then we can discuss some specific concerns of residents and council. The second land use designation is what we call commercial mixed use designation. This is a new designation that's outside of your official plan now. And it's to encourage mixed use, commercial and residential, within one designation, so that you don't have commercial designation only for commercial and residential only for residential uses. We've identified 3 major areas for this land use designation. It's Main Street, north-south side of Main Street, north and south side of Main Street, the Elizabeth Street corridor, and the south end of Ontario Street. The main use is commercial, but as I say, we're encouraging residential uses within that within that designation. Other policies include encouraging a preparation of design guidelines, because these areas are, in our opinion, three major gateways to the urban area of Brighton, and we'd like some high level design to ensure that these areas aren't or present the town in a good light. So we're encouraging. We have some guidelines in terms of landscaping and building location, but we're promoting the town doing additional streetscape design for these areas. Again, just to keep the quality of these corridors up. And the third designation is the light green areas. It's environmental protection. And we haven't really changed anything from your existing official plan. In fact, the secondary plan refers us back to the policies of the existing official plan. So any changes to add or to remove any lands designated environmental protection will be in consultation with the Conservation Authority. They have highly regulated areas in and around this environmental protection agency, which includes wetlands, sloped areas, floodplains are some examples of the environmental protection areas. The next designation is the parks and open space lands. That's the dark green areas on the maps. These are neighborhood park areas that we've located within the residential areas, and the criteria we use for locating these the neighborhood parks was that they would be within 250 to 500 meters walking distance of anyone that is in those residential areas. It's about a 2.5 to 5 minute walk, so that everyone has easy access to the neighborhood parks. The development of what those parks would look like would come at the next stage of development, and those lands would be dedicated by developers as development happens, and the town would receive the parklands in lieu, or as parkland dedication as the development happens. The next land use identified is community facility. That's the blue areas, and there's only 2 areas on the schedules that are identified as community facilities. These are areas owned by the municipality, and basically it's the lands that are currently utilized by King Edward Park, and there's another area north of Main Street that's I'll say that the use, it will be community facility of some sort, but then again, that will be in the next stage of development. Another component of the secondary plan is the transportation section, and it's broken into 2 components. There's the road network, or the automotive transportation system, and we have a hierarchy of road network. There's arterials, collectors, minor. We have major and minor road network. The arterials, Ontario Street, and the name, well, John Street would be one, but they're on the map shown as arterials. The county roads, Main Street and Elizabeth, are also designated arterials, county arterials. The plan includes, given the transportation section, that the integrates with the residential and the commercial land use designations for certain land uses to be located on certain road classifications, so that the higher vehicle use would be on collectors or arterials, and then the local streets would be used for lower density residential, for instance. The second component of the transportation system is the active transportation, which essentially trail systems and what we call MUPs. It's a multi-use pathway system, so it will be for walking and cycling and those sort of things. We've put a lot of thought into that because it's one of the things, as Renee pointed out, that we heard from the community that there was a need for more connectivity amongst all of the land uses. So we've put in a pretty extensive network of trail systems. A lot of them, well, the MUPs for the multi-use pathways primarily follow the local road networks, whether the collector roads or the arterials. The trail systems, we've allocated those to the creeks or valleys, streams, the low-lying areas and environmental. And I don't have it here, but I think overall in the three secondary plan areas, we're recommending about, was it 7 kilometers of trails and MUPs throughout the just the secondary plans, and they will all connect with the existing trail network that's in town. That brings us to the last section of the plan, is the implementation section. As Renee said, the lands are now greenfield. This is the next stage of planning that further refines how it will be done. And then the implementation, or what gets built and how it gets built and when it gets built, is the next and final step in the development process. We'll be using traditional planning tools in the Planning Act, subdivision approval, severance approval, site plan approval. And there's policy in here. There's a initiative by the province. It's been around for a number of years. It's called a community planning permit planning process. And basically, the intent of that process is to speed up development approvals. I think it's now been looked at that the approvals process in planning in Ontario is very arduous and long. So there's this process called the community planning permit system would speed that up. So we're also looking at the official plan and zoning bylaw update, and so that may be a component of it, just as an aside. So that concludes everything I have. Oh, sorry. One more is what's the next step needed in this process. We're here to, as you know, a public meeting to gather more public input into the plan. We'll take that back over the next month, 6 weeks, and hopefully have the final product back on council's desk either May or June for adoption. And the final approval rests with the county. So once council has adopted it, goes off to the county for approval. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you both. Are there persons present who have questions or comments regarding the secondary plan version 2?
Hi, we do. Teresa Nuno Tome.
Sorry, Teresa, I can see your last name is Tome. You said there was something before the Tome.
It's Teresa and Tome.
Oh, and pardon me.
That's okay.
Thank you very much. Go ahead and make your comment or ask your question, please.
So let me just bring up the picture again. You guys just had it up. It's more regarding the roads that you guys are looking at building, right? You guys are looking at building a road that connects right next to 54 Georgina, on the north side of the property, right?
So we need to go back to
This image is here. It's this image here.
The one that we're showing now?
Yes, that's right.
So just to be clear, we're not looking to build any roads. we're creating a framework by which developers would make proposals and we would guide them to place the road network, give or take, where we've suggested. But that doesn't mean it's necessarily going to happen where we're seeing those on the maps today. Because
Right.
they come up with a better idea. And
Right.
we would consider that, we would have to consider that. We'd have to consider any idea brought forward, but if their idea is better, we would go with that.
Okay. So like, and
For the sake of argument, let's assume that we're planning a road there today, and I'll let you carry on with your discussion.
yes, our concern is like
Through the property.
it's not only is it adjacent to our property, but like we know that like when people are trying to cut into town, right, they're likely going to use that as their shortcut through, right? And it just creates, instead of like having people go through like the main like Dundas Road, let's say, or Elizabeth, people are going to be cutting across to like try to get to you know, Brighton's downtown, like the center of town, essentially. And like the proposal here also has you guys creating like potentially a road that's going to cut through not only like our property but our neighbor's property as well.
Yeah, I can see your point. I'm looking at the more specific map actually now. I guess I would look for comments from the planners, or are we just taking this under advisement at the moment and to be included in the actual recommended plan that comes forward?
Yeah, we are collecting all the feedback tonight, and we will get back to the individuals in a follow-up report. But just to reiterate what the mayor said, is that these are tentative roads. It's not necessarily going to happen just like that. There will be other processes that is needed before this is finalized. And that's all we can say at this stage about that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you all. So, Mr. and Mrs. Tomei, just to circle back, I want to make sure you understand that we've heard what you have to say. Staff have made notes on this, and we'll be bringing back I guess, a final report to us in May or June for consideration, for council's consideration. And I do know that you sent in correspondence over the weekend, and all of council did receive that correspondence, and staff are aware of the correspondence as well.
We appreciate that, and like we appreciate, like I know Councillor Jeff did spend some time walking us through, and we appreciate the time that he's given. And I know that there's another councillor there that reached out as well. We're definitely grateful. Our preoccupation really kind of stands with like we chose Brighton very specifically here because of the sense of community and culture that exists there, right? And now we kind of feel like the rug's being pulled from underneath our feet here. And so like we do appreciate like all your consideration here. I know that like to me it's a little bit concerning that like the current sellers, had brought forth a proposal about, like the road and had concerns around the road as well. And now it's just like I want to make sure that like, that the plan that's being proposed to possible developers isn't going to be one that's just like, well, like it's going to be going through, a lot of those properties on Georgina and impacting us as a family as well, right? Like we hope that there can be some considerations made around, what this can kind of look like, so that like, we're not as impacted here.
And council certainly appreciates that. I'm seeing nods around the table as you're speaking. And I can appreciate that if you just bought this property and suddenly you looked at a map and there was a road running through your property, it
Yeah.
was quite alarming. I think all of council appreciates that you are just putting eyeballs on this, having closed on a sale and not even having moved to town yet, or to the municipality yet. So, welcome to Brighton when you get here. Your words
Thank you. Thank you.
We're definitely excited to be joining your town.
We're excited to have you. And staff are having consideration for everything you're saying. I guess my comment is, why would we run the road through, but right past these folks' houses when, we could move it over a little bit and it wouldn't even affect their properties at all, move the primary one up, and it would be where the current
Yeah,
Yeah.
we appreciate that, Mayor.
would not affect them at all. So I'm throwing those words out there for you, Mrs. Tomey, so that the
Thank you so much.
We really appreciate
for
that.
And we'll see what comes back. I suspect when it comes back, you'll be full-on residents of Brighton, and we'll see you right here in Chambers.
Sounds
Absolutely.
great. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Jeff, once again.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else present in person or online who has questions or comments with regard to the secondary plan?
Hi there, my name's David Pearce. Can you hear me okay?
And David, go ahead.
Hi there. Well, obviously just looked at the plans and we moved from England to Brighton, chose Brighton, absolutely love it. We actually live on the end of Percy Street and we chose this location because it was right on the edge of town. It was in the countryside. And we actually paid quite a premium for our house. We've been here 12 years. And now I look at the plan, it looks like we're going to be on a four-way road, which is quite concerning to us. Just wonder what the next steps are. Obviously, you're saying it's not going to be in stone, but is someone going to get back to us with some plans, or how's this going to be communicated to us?
So as a secondary planning process, this becomes part of Brighton's official plan, which is a high-level strategic planning document that does not put roads in place or put houses in place or put pipes in place. It just offers opportunities for developers to have consideration for what next steps might be as they purchase large chunks of land around your property or near your property along Percy Street. And Brighton does build out, because where we're talking about, all of these parcels, all these special areas are in the built boundary of Brighton, in the existing built boundary of Brighton. So in today's regime, we could receive a development proposal without having any framework or guidance for that proposal. And we would have to have consideration for that. Under the new, if the secondary plan goes through, if council passes it, if county council passes it, then the new framework would provide guidance for developers on road networks, on where houses go, what size of houses, et cetera, et cetera. So really, this is a high-level strategic document that offers suggestions for developers from an official planning perspective. It doesn't change zoning on any mapping anywhere. It only provides that high-level development guidance at this stage. So next steps, you ask, next steps would be for, after we've taken all the comments into consideration, both from this meeting and past meetings and past consultations, staff will come back in the next 60 or 90 days or so with a final draft for council's consideration. If council were to pass that draft, it would be sent off to the County of Northumberland for consideration. And there may be opportunity at that point for county staff to come back and make some recommendations, or it may go to county council and receive passage or not, depending on the mood at county council, I suppose. After that, the next step would then be for a developer, one or many, to come along and offer proposals based on this, and we would have to then have consideration for zoning and subdivision agreements, et cetera, et cetera. So as Mr. Barnes said, this is a 2051 plan, a building out through 2051 plan. If you're at the top end of Percy Street, I wouldn't expect you to see neighbors in the next 10 years or so, but one never knows. And I'll turn the floor back over to you, Mr. Pierce, if you have anything further. He muted himself.
The network cut out. I didn't hear the last minute.
Oh,
Sorry.
it's okay. I didn't write down what I was saying, so I couldn't possibly repeat it. What was the last thing you heard? And I'll try to recall what I said.
Sorry.
You know what the last thing you heard was?
Well, about all the consultations you explained.
So the next steps would be for this council to pass the next draft, county council to pass the final draft, and then provide opportunity for developers to make their submissions and provide opportunities for zoning changes. But as Mr. Barnes said, this plan takes us out to 2051. So it is a 25-year plan. And if you're at the top end of Percy Street, I wouldn't anticipate you'd see neighbors anytime soon.
Okay. Okay. Well, thanks very much for your explanation.
You're welcome. And we will take your concerns into consideration as we move forward with the next phase.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Anyone else with comments or questions with regard to the secondary plan, either in person or online?
Jody Snow, I do have a question about Percy Street. Just so I'm on record about this, there is a lot of streets that are merging into our collectors that you want to make a collector street. I do also have a question about well water and what your plans are for that.
Nothing in the near future. But if these were to build out and municipal services were to be provided along the roadways, the local residents would be encouraged and or at some point required to go on municipal services. Again, if you're on Percy Street, I wouldn't anticipate that would be for quite some time.
All right. Yeah, but then the only other concern I have is just the amount of roads that are coming onto our road. It seems like very high traffic, and living on a dead end street for all of my life here and my mom's life, as she is a Simpson. I'm concerned about that. I'm concerned about the residential, I understand, but the amount of traffic that we will see with small children on this road and just having a small street with lots of neighbors that are all friendly with each other. So that's my concern.
It's everybody's concern, Jody, to be quite frank. I think we're all concerned with the impact of growth and what that means for our community, our neighborhoods, our roads. I'll say I don't want to mess with a Simpson, that's for sure. Not in Brighton anyway. But noting your concern with regard to the number of roads that are being considered for connection to Percy Street, I will reiterate what I said on the last mapping, which was these are just conceptual. A developer could come along with an entirely different view, and we would not just have to have consideration for that. We would have to have a good reason to say no. So these are just, it's just a framework at this stage. It's a strategy for growth in the municipality.
All right. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Anyone else present, in person or online? Go ahead, come on up. I'll just get you to push the gray button in front of you.
Hi, thank you. I'm just a note to the developer. What is the reason?
Sorry, I'll ask you to introduce yourself.
Oh, Cheryl Duxbury. I
Thank
think you
Mrs.
know who I
Duxbury.
am.
I do.
What is the need for the density going from low to medium to high density with an increase of 10 to 15% more?
Mr. Barnes?
There's a trend to create more compact development and affordability of housing. Smaller lots, higher density leads theoretically to higher density or more affordable housing units.
Okay,
So
that does not go with the theme of what Brighton was and still is today until you start really high density areas all over the place. It takes away green space. It takes away a lot of things. It increases traffic. We only have two main roads, Ontario and Cedar.
And as the town develops over time. That's taken into consideration. We have a lot of policies that in the document that specify where the low, medium, and high density residential can go and have appropriate road networks and connections. So it's not as if there's going to be high rise beside a single family home. It'll be gradual, but the overall density is encouraged to increase it that, as I said, 10 to 15% higher.
That's a lot in my opinion, but thank you.
Duxbury, there is a sheet on there, if you could just complete that out. I would also add that increasing density makes infrastructure costs more affordable because more people are paying for that infrastructure that is laid into the ground in a neighborhood. So that's just one of the reasons I think the province is encouraging these higher density neighborhoods in smaller communities like ours.
Okay. Let's take it back with me, or do I do it here?
No, if you just fill it out and leave it there, just in case someone else would like to speak. And with that in mind, is there anyone else who would like to make comment with regard to the secondary plan version 2? Members of council. Councillor Wheeldon.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you all for being here. It's very rare we get so many faces in here, so lovely to see you all. I know most of your faces and a few I don't know, so welcome everyone. I have 8 points, and so unless somebody else wants to.
Let's start with one and we'll see where we go.
With one. The first thing I want to say is I really appreciate how much vision there is in these documents. And it was mentioned in the slideshow that this aligns with council's vision. It's not always easy to see that in a policy document that is bullet pointed and numbered down to the fourth indent, but there is a lot of vision in there. And in particular, I love the design standards in 4.1 to 4.4. Looking at what makes a sustainable community, having policies that support that, what makes an accessible and welcoming community. One thing I was wondering is, I didn't notice anything about universal design standards for accessibility there. Is that something that we can enshrine in the secondary plan?
Mr. Barnes, Mrs. Whiteman. They're making notes.
Yeah.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you so much, Jeff, for highlighting that. That is something that we have talked about and that we are considering to add to the next version of the secondary plan. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you both. Carry on.
Yeah, I won't soapbox about it, but the accessibility committee is committed to trying to improve accessibility in Brighton. And the reality is that the provincial plan to have a fully accessible Ontario by last year didn't quite make it. In fact, we're very far. So if we can enshrine accessibility into our planning documents, we might get to that accessible future at some point, particularly as our population ages. It's increasingly important. Another thing that I was hoping we could see in there under 3.3 in transportation is that there's no mention of Quinte Transit. As a Brighton's representative on the board of Quinte Transit, I know we're trying real hard to find ways to get regular service into Brighton. And having population density really helps with that. So as new, more dense neighborhoods are developed, then that's more people who could take the bus rather than having to have cars, which overall reduces traffic. So I would love to see transit recognized under transportation section.
There are nodding of heads behind you.
Okay. You mentioned the multi-use pass, and I really appreciate that. I love the pass. I love the trails. I know that sometimes multi-use paths are considered an alternative to bike lanes. Given the number of dog walkers in Brighton and the way that a leash can turn a multi-use path wide enough for two to pass each other into a single lane or a potential bike accident. I don't always feel that multi-use paths are cycler friendly. I don't like running over dogs with my bike or getting caught up on a leash. And I wonder if we could support bike lanes in addition to multi-use paths wherever possible.
Mrs. Whitman.
Thank you once again through you, Mr. Mayor, for that clarification there. We will definitely look into that. Even recognizing that that would also be done on an implementation stage where there would be more detailed design. But thank you so much. Also on the point of the Quinte Transit, we found it very interesting that during the public surveys, there has not been a lot of comments from the public about transit. They are not requesting. And so we were just wondering why was that the case. But we do recognize that as policy writers, we can actually do a little bit of a top-down planning and think about the future and actually make accommodation for that. So thank you. We appreciate that comment.
Thank you both. Brighton is the penultimate car-centric community. I used to joke when I went to university that my mother would drive from the Bank of Commerce to the Royal Bank. Then I'd have to describe how close those two banks really were. Councillor Wheeldon.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, we actually do have, I think, 6,700 trips into Brighton per month with Quinte Transit as it is. And obviously, we'd love to see that increase. One that's just a general comment. There are a lot of references to Lower Trent Conservation Authority. And unfortunately, as of February 1st, Lower Trent Conservation Authority will not exist, and it will be called the Eastern Lake Ontario Regional Conservation Authority or something like that, because the province is forcing amalgamations on us. So maybe just a note to change it to more a generic conservation authority without the name. I did have a question about garden suites. I know garden suites are exist in the Planning Act, and it's probably therefore incumbent upon us to always mention them. But my understanding is that garden suites are an older and much more restrictive version of what we commonly today just call an ADU or additional dwelling unit. Do we need to continue referencing garden suites?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we are currently actually reviewing that. And so, because when we started this process, we didn't have all of the latest policy changes, but we are actively in the process of reviewing that and changing the definition. Thank you.
Thank you all. Yeah, there have been, for the public's benefit, there have been nonstop changes to the Planning Act all term long. And as we see later on the agenda tonight, there's another one now, and it references changes to the changes that they made back in 2022, but still haven't implemented yet. So we're layer upon layer of change at this point, updating these things. So I appreciate you guys are working from behind. In section 2.11, urban fringe areas, there was something that I thought might require some explanation for residents, particularly if they own property in the urban fringe areas. I wonder if you can explain the following. It says lands in the urban fringe area are not eligible for the number of consents for new lots available through sections 5.2.1.1 of the Brighton Official Plan. Can you expand on that?
Mr. Burns?
I guess the intent of the urban fringe area is to ensure that major infrastructure corridors, land or road corridors, and I think the intent of that is to not allow consents that may compromise those extensions, but they'd still be permitted under the existing official plan if they don't compromise those corridors.
Thank you for that. It's my understanding that generally in a rural area, there's 2 or perhaps 3 lifetime consents or severances on a property. And so what you're saying is that you want to maintain the current shape of the fringe areas as much as possible, so that the next plan, the third
40.
plan,
Yeah,
tertiary
40 to 50 year plan, yeah.
will have something consistent to work with, basically.
Correct,
Okay.
correct.
In 4.4.2, subsection F, bracket 4, there's reference to composting and setting up a composting system. And we do have a composting system, so I was wondering if that was something left over from a previous draft from a few years back.
Through Mayor, it may be, and we'll edit or look at that again.
Thank you very much. And the last thing I'll say, to Ms. Duxbury's comment earlier about preserving green space and stuff like that. I was hoping we could refer this to the Environmental Sustainability Advisory Committee for input from them directly as well. And I'll just say at this point, I love how much this does commit to preserving and enhancing use of green spaces in Brighton. As I very often say, the more we build up, the less we have to build out. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wheeldon. Councillor Rowley?
Thank you, Mayor. I believe that Mr. Barnes made a comment earlier regarding commercial uses. There was a policy that's not yet part of the official plan. Could you just explain a little bit more about that in the process, and then the time frame that would take to add that to our official plan before it gets then pushed up the pipe to the county?
Mr. Burns?
Yeah, certainly. My comment referred to the designation, the mixed use commercial designation, and that the structure of the current official plan, it's commercial designation and residential designation. This sort of combines those two designations to give more flexibility and to allow, and in particular, well, we're familiar with what's going on at Main and Empire right now. That's what the intent of this is to be. It can be before this plan will become part of the official plan, and as you know, what's happening at Main and Empire has been approved through the zoning and the existing official plan. So any development proposal comes forward can still be approved under that.
Councillor Wright?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I've got about 3 different questions-ish to make. In section 2.9.1, the Presqu'île Parkway corridor gateway area is commented on. I'm just wondering, will that corridor design study consideration come forward in the remainder of this term of council? And I ask that because there's a couple points missing in the bullets there that I really think should be added in terms of the main length of Presqu'île Parkway itself is a major turtle crossing, as well as some other creatures, because it's a very low-lying area and there's marsh on both sides. And I'm just hoping that there can be some sort of traffic calming measure, because the way that street is currently, and I know there may be some stuff coming through the traffic plan, but something that will slow down traffic and provide corridors for the turtles to cross the roads there. Because I noticed you did say maintain a wildlife corridor, but I'm assuming you're meaning more the deer and the larger critters heading up into that green space that's above Presqu'île.
Mr. Barnes?
Yeah, on that point, that wasn't meant to be an exhausted list of issues to deal with. What the secondary plan is promoting, that we do a corridor study. All of those that are listed in the secondary plan, plus what you're suggesting, Councillor, would be in terms of reference to any contractor that would put a bid on it to do the corridor study. So we would sit down with the planning department, would create a terms of reference that would cover all those
Great,
issues.
thank you. Can I keep going? Section 4.2C, there's verbiage there that says shall maintain at least 1 tree per dwelling. Would those trees be developer, municipal, or owner supplied? And how would that kind of thing be monitored?
I'd suggest that would be provided by the developer. At the
Okay.
time of subdivision, it would be part of the subdivision agreement that a tree be maintained, and then in terms of long-term, and it could be written into a subdivision agreement as well, that if it's taken down, it has to be replaced, those sorts of words. But that would be, in my opinion, a developer responsibility at time of subdivision.
Yeah, I know that some developers will do every other, some of them do every other property kind of an idea. So I just noticed that this one was a tree per property.
Okay.
So I just wanted to see how that would flow out. And then my last one is section 4.4.2 D3. It talks about permitting keeping of livestock or poultry in the urban area. And I have heard of poultry being kept in the urban area, but I was really curious as to what livestock would be the potential.
Yeah,
I want a goat.
hamsters. I don't know. Yeah. Yeah, it's more common. The poultry thing is the main.
Yeah, it mentioned livestock
Yeah.
aside from poultry, so
Yeah.
it just seemed an unusual addition in the language. So I'm just really curious about that, what my neighbor could
Yeah.
potentially have coming in.
Might be a good opportunity for an edit.
Yeah.
I don't think we want to see livestock in the urban area of any kind, even hamsters. Breeding of hamsters. Are those your three, Councillor Wright? Thank you very much. Yeah, appreciate that. Any other members of council? Councillor Rowley?
Thank you. Just, I'm just going to go, I have, on page 45, there's talk about cash in lieu of parking in the commercial mixed use areas. And then on page 48, there's also cash in lieu of parkland. That hasn't been working for us very well. And I wonder if that could be reconsidered, that it should be dedicated space for parkland, dedicated space for parking, that we don't kind of just end up with the minimal amount of spaces for either one of those. If that could just have a little bit more consideration.
So I would support you on the parkland thing, but not on the parking thing. I'll just throw that out there.
Why not?
Because parkland, I agree. I think developers should be providing us with additional parkland. I think we've got a policy now that suggests that. So let's make sure our secondary plan is aligned with that policy. But parking if we want to encourage growth, commercial growth in our downtown, specifically in our downtown, which I think is where we would love to encourage commercial growth, we can't then be forcing people to knock down old buildings to create parking if they want to have a pub. And I had this conversation with the director of planning not even 2 months ago, where I said, you know, Paul, if this was downtown Toronto, we wouldn't be having this conversation. We'd be just saying, go ahead and put your pub up, or whatever the conversation was we were having with the existing building in place, and not wringing our hands over how many parking spots it should be and when we literally have 60 municipal parking spots available in a 500-meter radius around almost all of our downtown, which is always 45% vacant, except on Applefest. It's the only day of the year that it's actually completely full.
Right. And I get the town, but we're looking at the secondary plan area, right? So there again, because nothing's developed yet, at some point, we need to make sure that we have parking in those kind of places. I understand the downtown stuff, right? This town wasn't built for big cars and lots of them. That's for sure. But as we move forward with some of these new developed areas, communities as well, we need to assure that we have enough parking in those places. That's what we can agree or to disagree on that.
Come to some sort of compromise where it's both and.
That's a good thing.
Where it's both and.
Nice.
Because what I also don't want to see is Brampton style development where, we've got 4 lanes of traffic, 2 for cars and 2 for parking on each side. And, you know what I mean, though. I want to say that I hear what the folks are saying when they want to keep this a small community, right? Even if we do have to grow by 1,600 homes. growth is inevitable. We know that.
Oh, sure.
We've all seen it. Any other comments from members of council? Questions? Mrs. Whiteman, you mentioned that some of the additions to one of the areas are fairly new and the residents have only had about 2 months for engagement purposes. Will we be specifically reaching out to them or reaching out to them again to make sure we've captured them? I don't want anyone to, I mean, people can say whatever they want, but I don't want anyone to be able to say we didn't give them enough opportunity for expression.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, we will call a special meeting for the new landowners where they will get a chance to have an intimate conversation and deal with their individual specific concerns. Thank you.
Thank you. And my last question is a bit academic, and that's when did we stop doing mixed use commercial? Because certainly if you look at our downtown, it was built that way, and most small community downtowns are. And at some point we stopped doing that. We started siloing these little areas. And I love the idea that we're moving back into a more wholesome community feel when we build Brighton out. And I know through our official planning recently, we've included some of the older portions of the municipality that will permit people to have that mixed use on their properties. But when did we stop doing this? I would guess the 60s and 70s, but I don't know for sure.
Yeah, pretty much in the history of planning. Yeah, you're right. The 60s and 70s was when there was a move to separate, as I say, into silos, different land uses. So,
Well, in fairness, gas was cents a gallon. So, any other questions from members of council? Any final comments, Mrs. Whiteman or Mr. Barnes?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I just want to use this opportunity once again to thank council and public for your inputs. Contrary to popular belief, we value your inputs. It is helping us to actually zoom in and focus closer and straighten out all those little bugs in the document and in the process. So thank you very much.
Thank you both, and thank you council and senior staff for encouraging and participating and coming along with this process. It's been a long time in the works. There's still a lot of work to be done before we get to the finish line. But it does provide us with a vision, and it's an important vision that allows, as we say, a framework for development rather than constantly trying to figure out what the right thing to do is when an application gets put in front of us. So I feel this is a good path forward. I appreciate the effort. I appreciate the fact that you've robustly engaged with our community to make sure that voices are heard and that the neighbors who will be most affected have an opportunity to say what they have to say. And I appreciate those who are new to the community coming in and making sure we hear what you have to say too. So it's very much appreciated. I have a motion moved by Councillor Rowley, seconded by Deputy Mayor Anderson, that council receives this report and the draft secondary plan for purposes of receiving information and public consultation, and that council directs staff to receive and consider public and agency comments arising from the statutory public meeting as part of the continued refinement of the draft secondary plan. And Councillor Rowley, as the mover, it did say if there are public comments. We heard public comments. I'm striking that out so that we don't have to say that. You're okay with that? Yeah. Deputy Mayor is the seconder. You okay? Any discussion on the motion? All in favor? There being none opposed, that motion is carried. All righty. Second item in our statutory public meeting is consent application file B01 2026 and zoning bylaw amendment file Z02 2026. Subject lands are on Guertin Road. The applicants are Adam Herrington and Justin Herrington. We're holding a public meeting regarding these two consents, and the purpose is to request a decision from council on the proposed consent application and zoning bylaw amendment. Just waiting for my planner to get into her seat. Ms. Britnell, by what method and on what date was notice of the consent application given?
Through your worship, notice of the zoning bylaw amendment and consent application were delivered on March 20th, 2026 to all property owners within 120 meters of the subject property. Notice was also circulated to all agencies as required under the Planning Act. In addition, a signed notice for both applications was posted on the subject property.
Thank you, Ms. Britnell. And would you please explain the purpose and reason for the proposed consent application and zoning bylaw amendment?
Through your worship, the purpose of consent application B01-2026 is to create a vacant parcel with an area of 0.8 hectares or 2 acres with 100 meters of frontage along Guertin Road. The retained lands will have an area of 40.8 hectares with 300 so meters of frontage along Guertin Road. The applicants are proposing to develop a rural residential dwelling, and this is reflected in the land uses associated with the rural designation. For the purpose of the zoning bylaw amendment application Z02-2026 seeks to rezone portions of the severed land from rural RU zone to the rural residential RR zone to ensure consistent zoning with nearby land uses and avoid any proposed, and to have proposed non-agricultural development and also with consideration of existing livestock facilities from the neighboring properties. Included in the staff report is a minimum distance separation or MDS1 setback calculation.
Thank you, Ms. Britnell. Are there persons present who have questions or comments regarding the proposed consent and zoning bylaw amendment? Any from council? Any final comments, Ms. Britnell?
Through your worship, none at this time.
Thank you for that. I have a motion moved by Councillor Butwell, seconded by Councillor Wheeldon. The council enacts a bylaw to rezone portions of the severed lands from the rural zone to the rural residential zone. Is there any discussion on the motion? All in favor? Being none opposed, that motion's carried. Next item in our statutory public meeting is consent application B02-2026 40 Rosslyn Drive. The purpose of the public meeting is to request a decision from council on the proposed consent. Mr. Warren, by what method and on what date was notice of the consent application given?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the consent application was mailed on March 20th of earlier this year to all property owners prescribed under the Planning Act. Notice was also circulated to all applicable agencies required under the Act. In addition, a sign was also posted on the property on March the 23rd, 2026.
Thank you, Mr. Warren. And would you please explain the purpose and reason for the proposed consent application?
Again, through you, Mr. Mayor, glad to. The purpose of the consent application is basically to sever. It's basically a 350 square meter lot addition, a triangular portion from the property located at the back of 96 Sanford Street and being added to the adjacent residential property at 40 Rosslyn Drive. The retained parcel is intended to accommodate a future dwelling, and there's actually construction out there today when I was by, and the receiving parcel benefits with more space at the back of the property.
Thank you, Mr. Warren. Are there persons present who have questions or comments with regard to the consent application? There are none noted. Members of council, questions or comments? Again, none noted. Mr. Warren, any final comments?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, none at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a motion moved by Councillor Wright, seconded by Councillor Rowley, that council approve the consent application B02-2026 for a lot addition to 40 Rosslyn Drive, subject to the conditions as outlined in this report. Is there any discussion for members of council? All in favor? There being none opposed, that motion's carried. The next item in our statutory public meeting is with regard to zoning bylaw amendment application Z01-2026. The location is 175A Ontario Street. The applicant is 1984783 Ontario Incorporated. The purpose of the public meeting is to request a decision from council on the proposed zoning bylaw amendment. And again, Ms. Britnell, by what method on what date was notice of the zoning bylaw amendment application given?
Through your worship, notice of the zoning bylaw amendment was delivered on March 20th, 2026 to all property owners within 120 meters of the subject property. Notice was also circulated to all agencies as required under the Planning Act. A sign was posted a signed notice for the application was posted on the subject property as well on March 23rd, 2026.
Thank you, Ms. Britnell. And would you please explain the purpose and reason for the proposed zoning bylaw amendment?
Through your worship, the purpose of the subject application Z01 2026, and I will note that there is an error in the agenda and on the first line of the report that this is Z01 2026 and not Z02 2026. It was noticed properly. It was just a clerical error when copying over the report into iCompass. So to go back to my original point there, the purpose of the subject application Z01 2026 is to amend the zoning bylaw in order to allow for residential use of the urban residential type 1 R1 zone on a lot with reduced minimum frontage located at 175A Ontario Street. The subject vacant lands have an area of 774 square meters with 14.6 meters of frontage along Ontario Street, a public street. This zoning bylaw application would allow for construction of a composed dwelling and a detached accessory structure, aka a garage, that would be located on this parcel. The date of the lot creation was 175A the date of the lot creation of 175A Ontario Street prior to the lot addition had been September 9th, 2022. A stamping of the lot addition of the eastern parcel occurred on March 9th, 2026. The registration of this lot has recently been finalized. That has prevented a formal GIS map, and at time of circulation, the lot still appeared to be attached to 175A, and therefore it has resulted in a map that is not totally reflective of the lot itself. So we are dealing with parts 1 and 3 on the registered plan. There's road widening that occurs on part 2 that has been granted to the municipality. I'm hoping that we can hopefully answer some of the questions that I suspect are coming.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Are there persons present who have questions or comments with regard to this proposed zoning bylaw amendment? Members of council? Any final comments, Ms. Britnell?
Through your worship, none at this time.
I have a motion. Thank you. I have a motion moved by Councillor Butwell, seconded by Councillor McCausland, that council enacts a bylaw to rezone portions of the subject lands identified as 175A Ontario Street from future development to urban residential 1 exception number 48 zone in accordance with the Municipality of Brighton zoning bylaw 140/2002 as amended as detailed in this staff report. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? The motion's carried. The final item in tonight's statutory public meeting is consent application file number B03 2026. The subject lands are 14 and 16 Bayshore Road. The applicant is the estate of Jennifer Mercer Colby with agent Mr. Ian Colby. The purpose of the public meeting is to request a decision from council on the proposed consent application. So Ms. Britnell, by what method and on what date was notice of the consent and application given?
Through your worship, notice of the consent application under section 53 was delivered on March 20th, 2026 to all property owners within 60 meters of the subject property. Notice was also to all agencies as required under the Planning Act. In addition, a signed notice for the application was posted on the subject lands on March 23rd, 2026.
Thank you, Ms. Britnell. And would you please explain the purpose and reason for the proposed consent application?
Through your worship, the municipality was in receipt of a consent application submitted by the agent, Ian Colby, power of attorney, on the subject lands municipally known as 16 Bayshore Road. The purpose is to sever a parcel that has merged on title, a legal opinion that was included with the application. The subject lands at 16 Bayshore Road have this area of 440 square meters with 12.44 meters of frontage along Bayshore Road. And the other parcel, 14 Bayshore Road, has an area of 780 square meters and 22.8 meters of frontage along Bayshore Road. However, they have merged on title. The lands are currently designated as Shoreline Residential Exception 1, SHR1 zone within the Municipality of Brighton's zoning bylaw 140/2002.
Thank you, Ms. Britnell. Other persons present who have questions or comments regarding the consent application? There are none noted. Members of council, any questions or comments? Councillor Wheeldon.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a bit of an academic question of my own. It seems that I only ever hear about properties merging on title when it's a problem. And I wonder if it's ever not a problem and why we started doing this in the first place. I tried to search for it on the web, and even the AI tools I didn't ask for could not give me an answer. I'm wondering if a planner in the room could.
Who would like to field that question? Director Walsh, I'm going to turn the floor over to you and ask you to be as brief as you possibly can with this academic question.
Sure. It's more of a legal question than an academic question. So Section 53 of the Planning Act lays down the power of consents, and it was a section that was really intended to allow the province to delegate some approval of the municipalities. So consents typically characterizing smaller scale developments, but at some point in about 1978, the province passed universal subdivision control through an amendment to the Planning Act, which meant that no subdivision of land was permitted without a consent. Prior to that, you could just go to the registry office and register a deed. That created some problems, however, because now the lots would fail to merge if you wanted them to be combined. So now we have to do a consent to unmerge things. The intent of universal subdivision control was to undo a whole lot of rampant checkerboarding that was done and causing a lot of problems when the province was putting through a lot of highways and things like that. People were purposely checkerboarding properties just to get expropriation premiums out of their land. So that was the reason why, one of the reasons why they brought that in universally. Then another amendment to the Act was 1983 or so, where they applied once a lot, always a lot as a consumer protection tool as well. And that meant that lots couldn't merge without further Planning Act approval. So that's the dry 101 of consents under the Planning Act.
Well, we do appreciate the 101 version, Director. Thank you very much. Any other questions from members of council? Ms. Britnell, any final comments?
Through your worship, just mentioning my sincere appreciation of the director and the manager for helping me with this FOIA.
Thank you for that. I have a motion moved by Councillor Wright, seconded by Councillor Rowley. The council give provisional consent to application P03-2026 in accordance with the conditions of consent provided in this report. Is there any discussion? All in favor? There being none opposed, that motion's carried. That ends our statutory public meeting with a motion moved by Councillor Butwell, seconded by Councillor McCausland. The council move out of the statutory public meeting April 13th, 2026 at 7:50 p.m. Is there any discussion? All in favor? There being none opposed, that motion's carried. Anyone else need a break? I'm going to take a 5-minute break just to get a drink of water for myself. And it is 7:48 p.m. We will reconvene at 7:55. It was noticed that there was a portion of the motion missing with regard to the Guertin Road Herrington property. So I have a motion that reads that council reconsider the motion regarding consent application B01 2026 that was considered and voted on at this evening's meeting, and further that the motion be amended to add the following recommendation: the council approve consent application B01 2026 for a new lot subject to conditions outlined in this report. Is there a mover? Is there a seconder? It's moved by Councillor Rowley, seconded by Councillor McCausland. Any discussion? All in favor? There being none opposed, that motion's carried. All right, that brings us into planning and development reports. The first report is temporary parking restrictions for construction detour roads. Bylaw Enforcement Officer McGee, we've read your report. Do you have anything to add or highlight?
Not at this time.
Thank you, sir. I have a motion moved by Councillor Rowley, seconded by Deputy Mayor Anderson, that council pass an amending bylaw to the municipality's parking bylaw as shown in the bylaws section of this agenda for purposes of temporarily restricting on-street parking to expedite traffic through a construction detour route associated with the reconstruction project of Prince Edward Street. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Being not opposed, that motion's carried. Next report is with regard to the Integrated Community Sustainability Plan status update. Director Walsh, we've read your report. Do you have anything to add or highlight?
Through the mayor, just a couple of highlights. So the project is moving towards the end of it, and there's been a lot of consultation and workshops, as you're aware. The current status is we're having the consultant do an evaluation or appraisal on some of the action objectives, and those action objectives are being assessed for return on investment and what costs are going to be involved in implementing those things, and looking at some risk management and typical project management type stuff, but important things to be considered in the final assessment of the project. The latter stages now are deliverables 7 through 10, and those deliverables are the draft plan presentation to council itself, plus some sustainability standards and things like that. I'll just note that that is a little bit questionable now with Bill 98 because it pushes back on those things. So I'll be speaking with the consultant on Friday, and we'll have a conversation about that. So the other recommendation is to integrate with the strategic plan a vision statement for sustainability, or sustainability statement rather. And that will reflect some of the workings of the consultations that were done, and making sure that we keep an eye on sustainability matters as we do our staff reports and undertake our other works.
Thank you, Director Walsh. I have a motion moved by Councillor Butwell, seconded by Councillor McCausland, that the project deliverable number 3 of the Integrated Community Sustainability Plan, being the Community Engagement Report, be received, and that deliverable number 4 of the project workshop 3, findings, vision, and objectives, be received, and that council adopt a sustainability statement to form part of council's strategic plan as follows. Brighton is a resilient and inclusive community where people of all ages and abilities can live, work, contribute, and thrive. Sustainability in Brighton is shared responsibility and a common project embedded in every decision we make to protect and enhance our natural environment, cultural heritage, and economic resources. Guided by kindness, respect, and collaboration, we strengthen social connections, supporting existing and new local businesses, and deliver modern, efficient services. Through continuous efforts, stewardship, innovation, and community leadership, we are building an accessible, vibrant, and sustainable future for current and future generations. And the council adopt the themes of action objectives as referenced in this report for a feasibility review of each item to be undertaken by the consultant of record, SIA Partners, Inc. Is there any discussion on the motion? Councillor Wheeldon.
Thank you, Mayor. Really appreciate this report, this update. I know I've been very eager to receive it, so really glad that it's here. And I just didn't want to let us go past this statement without reflecting on it, because I think it's actually really profound. It really is a vision for what we do as a community and what we do around this horseshoe as a microcosm of that community. To be a resilient and inclusive community where people of all ages and abilities can live, work, contribute, and thrive. Having a shared responsibility and common project of sustainability embedded in every decision we make to protect and enhance our natural environment, cultural heritage, and economic resources. These are the things we've been talking about already tonight in the secondary plan and determining what the future of our community will look like. And the reality is that we determine the future of our community with every decision we make, whether we are thinking about it in those terms or not. Sometimes we determine a future carelessly and thoughtlessly, thinking about only the current needs or even the current desires. And it has really something I've learned a lot about over the last 3.5 years on this council has been that there are no real small decisions. Every decision that comes before us is something that staff have thought about, but they think about it and they think about it in great detail through the lens of their expertise, but they also think about it through the lens of the frameworks that we provide for them through a strategic plan, through a sustainability plan. And so I am so pleased to see us moving forward on this sustainability plan to enshrine this sense of responsibility for our own future and for the future of our residents, our neighbors, our kids and grandkids, to enshrine that future orientation in everything that we do. And just so that we are always aware that the repercussions of everything that we do will resound through history as we move into that future. So love to see that, love to see this statement that so encapsulates that notion of building the future together. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Anyone else? All in favor? There being none opposed, that motion's carried. Next report is overview of Bill 98, Building Homes and Improving Transportation Infrastructure Act 2026 and implications for the municipality of Brighton. Director Walsh, we've read your report. Do you have anything to add or highlight?
Mayor, I just highlight some of the key changes that how this might affect Brighton. We see that official plans are meant to be standardized now, common headings and common schedules. We don't really have any concerns or objectives to or objections to that. It's kept high level standardization. And I am dating myself when I say I remember when this was proposed in the late 90s. But the parkland issues, thankfully, Brighton has done its homework. We have our master plan. We have our parkland dedication bylaw done. So it may have some influences in terms of what we can or need to accept for parkland. And there is more of a process towards what is pre-consulted on parkland, and there's an appeal mechanism for parkland. So it adds more, this won't speed things up, but it'll give a little more discussion on the matters of parkland, which we have been doing kind of quite a bit these days since the master plan and bylaw have come in. We see changes to the site plan control. There's actually a suggestion of doing away with site plan control altogether. I'll just mention that for the Omni Quality Living development, we had through the site plan control approval, $1 million or so of offsite improvements made in terms of an 8-inch water main, sidewalks, etc. So this is not a small potato thing. We'd have to replace it with something else. You heard Mr. Brent Barnes refer earlier to the other tool, community permit planning system. So that might be what the province is really kind of pointing us towards. It's unfortunate because we had a new site plan control bylaw to bring forward too, which we may still, pending Bill 98 prescriptions. Complete application requirements. They've been nailing away at that, trying to get rid of the number of studies. Now we have core studies that are accepted and contingency studies, and but will help us avoid extra studies was to have clear standards. So they talked about getting rid of shadow studies. We saw how we had a shadowing study that would benefited the review of the hotel, and that was helpful for the people who live nearby. I think if we just have standards, we can avoid studies. And at the end of the day, if the applicant can demonstrate they're adhering to standards, then we've streamlined things. So we're going to endeavor to do that, to bring forward a standards manual. We see growth management. It hasn't really changed that much in some regards, but there's a new methodology. It's done through the Minister of Finance now. That was how it was always done before the Place to Grow Act. I think there is some more flexibility at the local level when we start looking at our own local growth forecasts. We have growth forecasts related to the secondary plan that were done by the consultants that we started with. Don't really have any major concerns with that. We see references to communal drinking water and wastewater systems. I think those are fine as long as the condominium pays for it. A small drinking water system is expensive to operate because of all the inspections and tests. And we just had a very recent experience with our neighbors here in Quinte West, where Young's Landing they wanted to see their wastewater and water rates to be more aligned with the rest of the community. It was denied by their council, but the difference in rates were like double because the small systems are expensive, and they're all different, but on average they are expensive and not something we would want to do. So we'd have to make sure that they are responsible for their costs at the end of the day. So those are some highlights.
Thank you, Director. I have a motion moved by Councillor McCausland, seconded by Councillor Butwell, that Council receive this report for information regarding Bill 98, Building Homes and Improving Transportation Infrastructure Act 2026, Associated Planning Act reform consultations and the potential implications for municipal planning tools, including parkland dedication and secondary planning. Is there any discussion? Go ahead, Councillor Wilden.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a few comments on this. There is a pattern with this provincial government of seeing something they consider to be a problem in Toronto and then making a rule that applies to everyone equally. Director Walsh mentioned that we already have our parkland dedication bylaw. We already have, we were bringing forward, they were bringing forward new approaches to things. I forget which one you just mentioned, but you just mentioned we've been on top of things. We've been doing all of the right things. We've been doing them proactively, preemptively, and we continue to then have our legs kicked out from under us by new provincial legislation that is really oriented around issues they have in Toronto. The City of Toronto had sustainability development standards, and the province came in and struck them down, and now they're prohibiting the rest of us from doing it. Just like they had bike lanes in Toronto, and the province came in and reversed those bike lanes and then passed a law preventing us from installing bike lanes of our own if it reduces traffic flow in any way. This is an ongoing issue of the province wants to change Toronto, and so they change everyone else as well. And we're seeing this in the way that they amalgamate conservation authorities. I remember speaking with an MPP a few years ago when the conservation authorities were merely being starved and not amalgamated. And his comment at the time was, well, the Toronto Conservation Authority runs a golf course. That's not what they're here for. And I said, well, what does that have to do with us? I've recently spoken with some MPPs with relation to the Conservation Authority mergers, forced mergers. And their comment was, well, we have to make rules that apply equally to everyone. And I understand that that's a lot of people's concept of how the law works. And in some cases it is. We are all equal under the law. But when you're talking about regulations and locally based decision making, that's actually not how the law works. We are not Toronto and should not be treated as such. So having led a delegation at Roma asking the deputy minister to stop making changes for a while so that we could just catch up, and then having this happen again, just again, as you were on the cusp of delivering new planning tools for us to use so that we could take our own steps to meet our housing goals and ensure that we have a sustainable and affordable community. I'm exhausted. I'm frustrated. I'm tired of this. And that's all I have to say about that.
Thank you for that, Councillor Whelan. Anyone else? I do find it interesting that, I mean, and I agree. I think, you know, study after study after study for things that don't need to be studied in an area are unnecessary. And if we can help streamline these things, then we can get product on the market faster, et cetera, et cetera. But the shadow study for the hotel provided council with the opportunity to say to the community, what you're worried about is unfounded. Because the shadow study showed us as council and staff that the shadow was not going to fall on existing properties. So I just throw that out there as one of the examples of where a study required by us at the time benefited the developer of the day in having council be able to make a decision that evening because we had the information in front of us. Any further discussion for members of council? All those in favor? Being none opposed, that motion's carried. Next report is with regard to award contract land bank program development master plan and business model. Director Walsh, we've read your report. Do you have anything to add or highlight?
Nothing further, Mayor, just that it's a very exciting project and really looking forward to getting this moving along. The consultants have expressed the same and they'll be here next week.
Thank you for that. I have a motion moved by Councillor Rowley, seconded by Deputy Mayor Anderson, that Council authorize the award of the contract for the Land Bank Program Development Master Plan and Business Model to Urban Strategies, Inc. in the upset limit of $351,300.75 plus HST, inclusive of all disbursements, and that Council authorize the Mayor and the Clerk to execute the agreement with Urban Strategies, Inc., and that Council direct staff to proceed with implementation of the Land Bank Program Work Plan upon execution of the agreement. Is there any discussion from members of Council? Councillor Rowley.
I do have a little bit of a question as we were talking about secondary plans earlier and the fact that this is not yet part of our urban vision, right? It's still outside the urban boundary. How does that affect this? Or are we just going to hopefully put something together here and then beg the province that it's going to be inside the belt boundary and we're going to move with this regardless of a secondary plan being totally official?
Fair question. Director Walsh.
Yes, it is a fair question. What we've discussed in the past is looking at what the ministry used to call squeezing the balloon. So in growth allocations, they have a limit, and they want that limit to be basically defined within your urban boundaries. And however, the urban boundaries can be changed by shape, but maybe not increased in area. So ergo squeezing the balloon. And so I've had those discussions with the county, and this is kind of the expectations going forward. Similar to that, there's been a new natural heritage plan in the county plan, official plan amendment number 1, and that has increased or added environmental protection lands. So my sense is that there's been some areas removed from urban, and that would mean some net additions as a result of that. Thirdly, the lands were needed to deal with the proposed John Street overpass. So we needed to have the lands abutting it because there will be extra width required. And so it has that immediate, I won't say immediate because it's not building it tomorrow, but it has that clear benefit to address what infrastructure has been identified as needed historically. And then lastly, there's the option, as we question the presenting consultants about a minister's zoning order. And so that's that's an option as well. The impetus for this particular piece of land is because it did come available at a particular time, and so it felt that we needed to make an effort at purchasing it for the John Street lands, and that's how it started. But we also noticed that affordable housing wasn't really happening in Municipality of Brighton, and so it was also motivated by that. So we would be supplying something that wasn't otherwise being supplied.
Then why don't you ask it? You're welcome.
Yeah, I have another question now, because now I'm going to go back to Bill 98 regarding the transportation infrastructure. How would Brighton qualify for all of that, justifying the fact that we need John Street?
Do you want to tackle that, Director?
Yeah, so the as announced by the province and the feds are saying that they're going to have these programs applied to 80% of Ontario's population. Whether we get included in that or not is another question. But we're just going to keep an eye on the program and see what becomes available. We've made inquiries with the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing, and they don't really know anything. That they only know what they've received through the same announcement that we have.
Thank you both. Anyone else? I was confronted with the question of what happens after this is all done today, and the thought bubble was, why is Brighton creating Soviet-style neighborhoods? They didn't. Those are my words. No one said that. Those are my words. And I assured the person I was speaking to that was not the case. That, in fact, was quite opposite of what we wanted to do. We wanted to create a development master plan so that someone then could build this portion of Brighton out in a way that would provide affordability, deeply affordable housing, workforce housing, military housing, all of those things we want. Plus some also have market available housing and commercial spaces, etc. So, Director, my question is, once this is all done, once the consultation, the robust community engagement, and the plan is delivered to Brighton, what would the next step be?
Yeah, the next step, presumably, it's going to be articulated through the business plan, which is a deliverable in itself. But the model that gets pointed to quite a bit is the one of a very conservative area of the country, the city of Red Deer, Alberta. And they've been doing this since, actually since about World War II. So they did it quite extensively in the 60s. In particular, that I'm aware, because my mentor many years ago was the director of planning for the Tri-County District of Red Deer. And they had a similar problem we were experiencing until recently, and that is that there's big demand for housing, and there was a bit different of a problem. There weren't enough developers bringing it to market. Land was invested in using as just that investment and not really being developed because they weren't builders. And so the city at the time decided, well, we need housing, so we're going to buy the land, and they would then just put a plan on down, and then they would then auction off the lots. So they have, and that program is still in place, pretty much the same one that they had in the 60s, still in place today, where they have qualified builders who are eligible to make a bid, and they buy about a maximum of 6 lots at a time. And so the city there puts in the infrastructure and does the auction. So it's really allowing some of the market to be activated on this a type of alternative plan that wasn't otherwise available there. For our context, it's going to be more about affordable housing, and I do have one person who has a history of building some mixed income housing, largely CMHC housing projects under the previous government. So I don't know what the terms are now, but that person seems to remain interested. It would have to be done by way of competitive bid, of course, but there seems to be a sense that there's still opportunity through federal programming to bring on affordable housing in a mixed income, mixed use environment.
Thank you, Director. The point, of course, being that once we have a plan and some infrastructure in place, the intent would be to turn it back over to the market. Thank you. Not criticizing how many words you used, Paul, I think. Anything further from members of council? Go ahead, Councillor Wheeldon.
Thank you, Mayor. The business model is yet to be determined, and I want to be cautious about using phrases like turn it back to the market. Reality is that we have a market housing system in Canada and across the continent, frankly, because the US is in many ways worse, that has not delivered on its promise. And the idea that the market can provide each one of us with our own picket fence, I think, is pretty clearly false at this point. And governments at every level subsidize the private housing markets to enormous degrees. And we're still struggling with housing affordability. I just finished reading a great book that is new on the shelves in the Brighton Public Library. It's called No Place Like Home by Jessica Barrett. And she makes this case very definitively. It is a Canadian book about the housing crisis and the issues going into it. So I strongly recommend everybody check it out. It's available at the library. But the point of this project, from my perspective, and something that I think has come through in a lot of our discussions about it, and something that comes through in these documents, is that in many ways, the market system has not provided all of the housing diversity and affordability that we need here. And we've had the workshops of the Intermunicipal Task Force on Housing and Homelessness to delve into why that is, and there are 1,000 reasons, and it's nobody's fault in particular. But the reality is that this is an opportunity for us to build things for our community that the market would not provide or reward, but that would nevertheless serve our residents and serve our community. And so I'm really excited to see us taking steps here to create something that would not have happened on its own without our intervention. And that is not hostile to markets, but is also not dependent on whatever can be most easily funded or whatever can be most easily sold. As someone who deals with selling homes every day, I see how often that falls short for our residents. And I'm proud that we have taken these steps. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Butwell.
There we go. So in reading your report, and through you, Mr. Mayor, to Director Walsh, I was a little surprised at the selection made. I was wondering if you could explain what the edge or what edge urban strategies had over dialogue.
Through the mayor. So that's explained briefly in the report, but urban strategies just had a little bit more solid background when it came to alignment with the terms of reference in general, particularly some of the land banking program background. They had a bit better feedback on the land economics. They had slightly better organized presentation. Each task was better explained. It was better coherent submission. So you had a better narrative for the whole plan as it would roll out. So those were the highlights that stood out. But it was, a spreadsheet with evaluation comparing the two, and all the evaluators came up with basically a same or similar to have a scoring at the end of the day. One of the evaluators did tie them. But when we averaged out all the scores, as you see in the report, it did align to urban strategies.
And just as a quick reminder, council did receive an email from Director Walsh providing a bit more detail
Yes.
based on the closed session information we received as well.
Yeah, I'm asking because the public is watching and this is recorded
I
and
understand.
people
And
can refer back and I'm not
just
going to,
providing a cautionary note about not releasing any proprietary information, et cetera.
right. And I saw the nodding. that
Carry on.
happened. So all four presentations were very good. The ones that we saw in open session here, we had lots of opportunities to listen and to ask questions and actually, yeah. And
We were enclosed.
yeah, I just
Definitely,
realized we were
yeah.
enclosed. Okay, we saw the presentations. They were all very good presentations. No proprietary information. So the one thing I saw from the dialogue presentation was a real alignment with what I feel this council was looking for. I also saw a passion that was mirroring things that we had discussed. I acknowledge 88.7 to 91.5. Those are both fantastic scores. Negligible difference. But I'm a little bit surprised. So has urban strategies been beyond the publishing of the agenda? Were they notified already? Have they done any work prior to signing of any agreements?
Through the mayor, so we did have a slight bit of a negotiation with urban strategies before confirming that they were awarded. As per the motion from council last session on this matter. So some of the revisions as described in the report were to a couple of preliminary studies I felt weren't good value. Either they should be completely done or not at all. And so they will need to be done at more of the construction related stages. I understand why they put it in there, just so that they would have some high level support for the development plan at the end of the day. But like the hydrology and the geotech, I just felt just wasn't enough there to really warrant spending that kind of money on it. So that's been removed. But you know, I concur with some of the characterizations you've made that dialogue phrase that they came out from the very start of their presentation, you know, public land for public good. They got it. But the urban strategies one seemed to reinforce that through the projects that they had done. And secondly, they also gained some points by having a shorter schedule of some significance. So, you know, we really did scrutinize over this a lot. And this is where it's landed. But I totally understand where you're coming from.
Go ahead.
Okay, so this is more of an observation, and perhaps staff could keep it in mind for future councils, perhaps. If the council itself is not making the decision, if the council is not making the final decision, then what was the point of the exercise of going through and listening to 4 presentations?
We boiled it down to 2.
We boiled it down to 2. They were all well, good enough. But what is the point? And we sat here, we had some good fulsome conversations. I just, and this is not a sour grapes thing. I'm just really surprised at the outcome, and without having any understanding of what that second stage looked like at the time. I'm surprised, and I do question, because I feel like this is a rubber stamping again. I feel like I would have liked to have. Anyway, I'm gonna stop. Thank you.
Do you have any comment, Director?
I was just really only going to say what you just said, that the council really did narrow down from 4 to 2. And through the many questions council asked, it really gave staff an opportunity to evaluate some points based on the quality of the presentations as well, and to get a sense of the depth of the respective firms and the degree of teamwork among the sub-consultants. So Urban Strategies just had a few extra points that way. Their team is just better integrated. Was the sense at the end of the day. They had a very long-term relationship with their sub-consultants, such the two that we saw presented. They've been working with each other for about 10 years. So that was a maybe one detail, not a fully determining detail, but one that did contribute.
And I really hope that as this project rolls out and we see it evolve through the years, that we can continue to be proud of the opportunity that we had to provide a significant amount of affordable and attainable housing to the people of Brighton. It is a demographic that is not really considered all that much. And I know that's why so many, well, all of us around this table undertook to purchase that land. And I really hope that's what we get.
If it's not, we'll be asking for our money back. And I don't mean, I'm joking, of course, but I'm not. The intent of this, as everyone in this room knows, is to help create affordable, significantly affordable housing in the community. And, you know, I mean, we can let the market bear what the market will bear all day long. We understand that that's not possible for all people who need to put a roof over their head. And the intent here is deeply affordable, rent geared income as part of the solution, you know, workforce housing, military housing as part of the solution, without creating Soviet-style ghettoized communities, right? So there's all sorts of mix and mingle here that needs to be done. And I know staff get that. Go ahead, Councillor Wright.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, when I saw this coming up tonight, I will say that I had much the same feeling that Councillor Ann is saying. And part of it came from going through the secondary plan and looking at the comments about affordable housing. And it was talking about it, and it specifically says housing for which the purchase price results in annual accommodation costs which do not exceed 30% of gross annual household income for households with incomes in the lowest 60% of the income distribution for the county. And so I started doing a deep dive into what does that income level look like for that 60% of the people in the county. And it wasn't entirely clear, but I was able to pull some numbers from StatCan. And it looked like a median full-time working individual, the median amount was somewhere between $61,000 to $72,000 for a single full-time person working. And when you consider what goes into that 30% of housing costs, like your mortgage or your rent, plus utilities, plus insurance, like all the things that encompasses and covers that roof that's over your head. When I kind of threw it at AI today, because I don't have the expertise of being a realtor, it was saying that would probably garner a house with a mortgage value of $350,000 to $400,000. And in speaking with Councillor Butwell later, it was actually probably less than that, $300,000 to $350,000, which, you know, when you look at what the average townhouse costs in Brighton right now, you're looking at probably between $500,000 and $600,000. And so I started looking, well, what do stacked townhouses cost? And it maybe lowers the price by maybe $100,000. And so when, you know, you look at people who are young, single, not necessarily making big money straight out of the gate, who are maybe only earning 40,000, then they're only looking at potentially rent. So that's a maximum of about $1,100 in rent. And I know most of our people here in Brighton who have a 1-bedroom are paying over that amount right now. So a mortgage cost with the numbers I was looking at for someone who is making that 61 to 72,000 was probably looking at about $2,100 in a monthly mortgage, and then rent for that lower tiered person, lower income person at the 41,000 was $1,100, and it doesn't necessarily encompass things like hydro and heat and water and all the extras. So there's a significant gap between income and what our lowest rent prices and mortgage potential prices are. So this is why it's so important that we are doing what we are doing here with this land banking program to create spaces for people who are either like young working families or senior women who have lost their husband or maybe relying on a very reduced pension. Thank you. The word was like flying out there somewhere. Or young single people who don't necessarily have the benefit of, living with mom and dad until the cows come home and need to find an apartment with a little bit of space that doesn't cost them more than what they should be paying. And we don't have that right now in Brighton, as far as I can see. So I'm really excited about this project. I really hope that we can stick to that ideal going forward, because there is a real need for this kind of housing in our community, in Ontario, straight across, really.
Likely coast to coast.
Yeah.
Anyone else? All those in favor of the motion? There being none opposed, that motion is carried. The next report is with regard to an encroachment agreement and bylaw for 406 County Road 64. Manager Warren, we've read your report. Do you have anything to add or highlight, sir?
Through the mayor, nothing further other than Miranda did all the work. It just has my name on it.
Well done. Credit where credit's due. It's moved by Councillor Butwell, seconded by Councillor McCausland, that council direct the mayor and the clerk to execute an encroachment agreement on behalf of the municipality for 406 County Road 64. And further, the council authorize the municipal solicitor to register the enacted bylaw for the encroachment agreement, including making any necessary revisions to legal descriptions, names, or undertakings as may be necessary. Is there any discussion? Is this the last thing we'll have to do for these people before they can finally open their product?
Assuming council support, Mayor, we've issued the building permit.
Any further discussion? Members of council, all in favor? Being none opposed, that motion's carried. Thank you. That moves us into items for information purposes. The item before us is from the MECP, Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks, decision and notice on the proposed boundaries for Ontario's conservation authorities. It's moved by Councillor Rowley, seconded by Deputy Mayor Anderson, that council receive the correspondence from the Ministry of the Environment and Conservation and Parks regarding the decision notice on the proposed boundaries for the regional consolidation of Ontario's conservation authorities. Is there any discussion? Councillor Wheeldon.
Thank you, Mayor. We have had more information about what this is going to look like recently, last week. And it is starting to, one concern that we had was that they had been saying that as of election day, every board was going to fold. Typically, that's not true of conservation authorities, and that board remains in place until they're replaced by a new board. And since the consolidation date is February 1st, there was concern that there was going to be 3 or 4 months where there was no board to speak of. Now they're saying that we will go through And so in theory, Councillor Wright and I will still be on the board until the end of January, regardless of what happens in the coming election. But obviously there's still some questions there. But at least there should be some governance capabilities for the boards as they merge, or for the conservation authorities as they merge. I just want to draw attention to the phrase here. Ontario has made to the recent progress Ontario has made to improve the CA system, including establishing OPCA to provide centralized leadership and oversight for Ontario's CAs. To date, I have yet to hear any rationale for why this is happening other than vague generalities about efficiencies. I asked an MPP when we were meeting about this, who asked for this? Because again, no conservation authorities that I'm aware of have asked for this. Apparently, there are 4 out of the 36 that are on board with this and think it's a good idea. The rationale, the most clear rationale we've been given to this point is that communities like Hamilton struggle with having to deal with 4 conservation authorities at a time. But the mayor of Hamilton just wrote a letter. I heard about it on the radio. The mayors of Hamilton and Brampton have written letters opposing this and asking the province to walk it back. So clearly that rationale about Hamilton's struggles was not coming from the municipality of Hamilton. So these issues of improvement, the question of improvement has not been established, but providing centralized leadership and oversight has certainly been established. That is the only thing that's clear about this process is control has changed. And so I appreciate them communicating with us and expressing their desire to continue to communicate with us. But so far, they haven't said much that makes any sense.
Thank you for comments. Anyone else? All in favor? Being none opposed, that motion's carried. We have nothing listed under unfinished business, which takes us into bylaws. First bylaw is with regard to parking control. It's moved by Councillor Butwell, seconded by Councillor Wheeldon. The council gives a bylaw its first, second, and third reading and finally passes on this date. Being a bylaw to amend and update bylaw 126, 2016, the bylaw to regulate and control vehicular parking on municipal property. Is there any discussion? All in favor? That motion's carried. Next bylaw is with regard to Guertin Road. It's moved by Councillor Wright, seconded by Councillor Rowley. The council gives a bylaw its first, second, and third reading and finally passes on this date, being a bylaw under the provisions of Section 34 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990, to amend bylaw number 140/2002 as otherwise amended of the Corporation of the Municipality of Brighton as it applies to the lands located at 0 Guertin Road, described as Brighton Concession 5, Part Lot 4, on Registered Plan 38R 5462. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Being none opposed, that motion's carried. And the next is with regard to 175A Ontario Street. It's moved by Councillor Butwell, seconded by Councillor McCausland. The council gives a bylaw its first, second, and third reading and finally passes on this date, being a bylaw under the provisions of Section 34 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990, to amend bylaw number 140/2002 as otherwise amended of the Corporation of the Municipality of Brighton as it applies to lands located at 175A Ontario Street, legally described as Part Lot 2, Concession 1, Brighton, Parts 1 and 3 on Registered Plan 39R 15109, Brighton. Is there any discussion? All in favor? There being none opposed, that motion's carried. And finally, a bylaw with regard to an encroachment agreement. It's moved by Councillor Wright, seconded by Councillor Rowley. The council gives a bylaw its first, second, and third reading and finally passes on this date, being a bylaw to authorize the mayor and the clerk to execute an agreement between the Corporation of the Municipality of Brighton and Norman and Corrine McKenzie regarding an encroachment onto municipal road allowance of Bowes Road. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? There being none opposed, that motion's carried. With your okay, council, I'm just going to move question period ahead of the closed session because then folks don't have to hang around if they have any questions. So members of the public in the gallery, if you have a question with regard to anything that appeared on tonight's agenda, please step forward. And there's no one online for that purpose. Is that correct? Thank you all. I have a motion moved by Councillor Butwell, seconded by Councillor Wheeldon, that Council resolve into closed session April 13th, 2026 at 8:48 p.m. pursuant to Section 239(2)(c) of the Ontario Municipal Act 2001 as amended to consider a matter respecting a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or a local board being a proposed purchase of land. And if we do proceed into closed session, we will take a 7-minute recess. Just for the public's awareness, is there any discussion on the motion? All those in favor? There being none opposed, that motion's carried. It is 8:48 p.m. We will reconvene at 8:55 p.m. We are recessed. so. Thank you. I have a motion moved by Council Rowley, seconded by Deputy Mayor Anderson, that Council rise and report from closed session April 13th, 2026 at 9:15 PM. In accordance with subsection 239(2) of the Ontario Municipal Act 2001, to discuss matters pertaining to C, a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board, being a proposed purchase of land. And further, that council received information regarding a proposed purchase of land and provided direction to staff to engage with the potential acquisition of certain lands located within the municipality of Brighton. No motions arose directly from closed session, and that a procedural motion to adopt the closed session minutes of March 23rd, 2026 was voted on during closed session. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Being none opposed, that motion is carried. That. And a motion moved by Councillor McCausland, seconded by Councillor Butwell, that council gives a bylaw its first, second, and third reading and finally passes on this date, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Corporation of the Municipality of Brighton Planning Meeting held on April 13th, 2026. Any discussion? All in favor? Being none opposed, that motion is carried. And a motion moved by Councillor Rowley, seconded by Deputy Mayor Anderson, that the April 13th, 2026 Council Planning Meeting adjourn at 9:16 PM. Any discussion? All in favor? Being none opposed, that motion is carried. Thank you, everyone. May God save the King.